Now, for the most awaited part and dreaded part of the subject, the confusing NIRC provisions. It's not really confusing. You just have to, okay, but first we'll discuss about the powers and duties of the BIR. The BIR class is under the supervision and control by the Department of Finance. You take note of this word control. Yeah? Yeah, but anyway, what are those powers? It's found in Section 2, the powers and duties of BIR. The BIR has the power on the assessment and collection of the internal revenue taxes, fees, and charges. The BIR can enforce forfeitures, impose penalties and fines, and it can execute the judgment of the CTA or the Court of Tax Appeals. It also has the supervisory and police powers as conferred by the NIRC. But most or more importantly, I want to discuss about the powers of the commissioner as found in the NIRC. The first one is this one. Interpret or the power to interpret tax laws. You will find that in section 4, first paragraph. There you go. This power class involves, the revenue memorandum order, the revenue memorandum circular. Actually, whenever the commissioner issues that, this is the kind of power that, the power to interpret the tax laws. This is what you learn as the subordinate legislation. It's just like the IIR, IRR of the other laws. Now, but there is this case. You remember this case, BDO versus Republic, the peace bond. You have to exhaust the all administrative remedy before you can go to court, especially involving this power. You don't, because the exclusive original jurisdiction lies upon the commissioner and it is subject to the review by the Secretary of Finance. You don't go to the courts immediately. You have to resort to administrative remedies. And there is this case also, I think this was given last year, last bar, the Philippine American Life and General Insurance Company versus Secretary of Finance. Apparently, the power to interpret tax laws, there is no remedy when the Secretary of Finance concurs with the interpretation of the commissioner. How did the Supreme Court remedy that? Or the Supreme Court said, to leave undetermined the mode of appeal from the Secretary of Finance would be an injustice to taxpayers prejudiced by his adverse rulings. It is axiomatic that laws should be given a reasonable interpretation which does not defeat the very purpose for which they were passed. Okay? As the specialized quasi-judicial agency mandated to adjudicate tax, customs, and assessment cases, there can be no other court of appellate jurisdiction that can decide the issues therein. So to remedy this situation, the Supreme Court, by implication, applied Section 7A of RA 1125, the word other matters. So there you go. If a taxpayer has, if the taxpayer is confused or has second thoughts about a provision or a provision in the NIRC, or if he is confused if he is taxable or not, he goes to the commissioner and, hey commissioner, can I ask for a ruling about this? We're doing something and we're not really sure if we are to be taxed because there is this income, but then yet again, etc., etc. There's ambiguity in the law. Come on, you have the power to interpret. Unfortunately, the commissioner, of course, you pay the tax. Then where do you go? You go to the Secretary of Finance. And again, you please, Secretary of Finance, reverse the ruling of the commissioner. But the Secretary of Finance says, no way, I concur with the commissioner. So, in the NRC, that's where it stopped. There is no remedy for that. But under this case here, the Philippine America Life and General Insurance Company versus Secretary of Finance, the Supreme Court said, under Section 7 of RA 1125, you can go to the Court of Tax Appeals. These were other matters. Okay? Now, the other power class under Section 4 is the power to decide tax cases. This is subject to exclusive appellate jurisdiction of the Court of Tax Appeals. Decide what? On disputed assessment, refunds, penalties imposed, and other matters arising out of NIRC. Again, other matters. You go directly to the CTA. If in case the ruling of the BIR commissioner is adverse against your client or you, taxpayer. So there are two powers under Section 4. The first paragraph pertains to the power to interpret tax laws. The second paragraph pertains to the power to decide tax cases. Okay, the other one is the power to obtain information. The third party rule class. You remember what I told you in a situation here in South Cotabato where a rich farmer, bought a vehicle, and the BIR found out that the farmer did not even file his income tax. And where did they find that out? During the examination in the books of accounts of the vehicle distributor. So the BIR said, okay, there's an undeclared income of this taxpayer because of the books of account of the other party. Okay, that's the third party rule. You remember the expenditure method which I discussed earlier. Okay, and there is the power to make assessment and prescribe additional requirements of for tax administration. You remember the fact, the administrative feasibilities. These are the examples of that principle. But if the BIR violates the principle, there's no, the court will not usually declare that as invalid. We'll discuss this later, the best evidence of obtainable rule. This is different from the best evidence as found in your rules of evidence. That's under Section 6. And you have also this authority to delegate power under Section 7. The exception class, well, the rule is the commissioner has the power to delegate his or her power, okay, except for the power to recommend promulgations of rules and regulations by the Secretary of Finance. And the commissioner cannot delegate the power to issue rulings of first impression or to reverse, revoke, or modify any existing ruling of the Bureau. The commissioner cannot also delegate the power to compromise or abate except for amounts of 500,000 or less. And the commissioner has no power to delegate the power to assign or reassign internal revenue officers in places where articles subject to excise tax are produced or kept. You also have this power of constructive distraint of personal property under Section 206, and the distraint of personal property under Section 207, authority to abate or cancel tax liability under Section 204B, authority to credit or refund tax cases or taxes under Section 204C, authority to prescribe real property values under Section 6E, and the power of the commissioner to suspend business operations. These are just, I might have overlooked some of the powers, but these are the more important powers that I would like to discuss, especially Section 4, first paragraph, and the second paragraph. You remember under Section 4, there are two powers, the power to interpret tax laws and the power to decide tax cases. So next, we will discuss about the power, or Section 6. I will just discuss some of the provisions which I think are more important, but you have to read the codal, okay? I will just guide you, so this is a review. This is not your supposedly first view, but I will guide you where to wield the provisions of the NIRC, because as I said, you don't read this, you have to weave the provisions so that you would better understand the import of the provisions. Okay, so you have to connect, cross read, etc. So next we will discuss the other provisions.